Understanding your dosha and learning to live in alignment with your dosha is one of the most liberating experiences, and something that I wish for everybody on this planet to experience at least once in their life. Maybe you're familiar with Ayurveda and you're already practicing. Maybe you've heard the word thrown around, but you're not really sure what it means. Or maybe this is completely new for you. And no matter where you are right now in this journey, my intention with today's workshop is to allow you to come into a more deep, embodied, and felt experience on the topic of your unique constitution or dosha. Now, before we get into the good, I'd love to do a little introduction. My name is Amy, and I'm a holistic plant-based nutritionist and a yoga teacher. And I alchemize it all through the beautiful lens of Ayurveda. Now, I had my own rock bottom experiences multiple times, which really allowed this path to become super clear for me. And now I feel so grateful, so blessed that I have the privilege of sharing this beautiful and ancient wisdom with you today. And I focus mainly on increasing digestion and overcoming emotional eating patterns with folks who are feeling energetically depleted, who are feeling detached from their bodies, and who have a relationship with food that no longer serves them where they're at. So this is truly my dharma, and I am absolutely filled to the brim with gratitude to be here today and sharing this with you. Let's begin with a little understanding of Ayurveda. The word Ayurveda literally translates to mean the science of life. And this science is based on achieving mind and body balance. The mind and the body are inextricably connected, and Ayurveda really understands this. It's beautiful because in this system, in this medical system, they don't separate the mind and body like we do in the Western world, where we have psychologists and then digestive specialists and kidney specialists. Instead, everything is interconnected. And if one area is imbalanced, we can understand that that imbalance is likely happening in the other areas of your being as well. Ayurveda encompasses medical, spiritual, psychological, and also philosophical components, all focused on promoting lifelong wellness and also on prevention of dis-ease. So Ayurveda was first discovered in India more than 5,000 years ago by the rishis or gurus there. In fact, or sages is the other word that we can use for rishis. So in fact, most of our current medical system, what so many people don't understand is that our medical system was actually based very heavily off of the teachings found in Ayurveda. How cool is that? Now, I want to bust a little myth here. Ayurveda is not a theory. It's not a superstition. It's not religious either. Rather, it is an intricate inner and outer scientific system that uses nature and the elements in nature to better understand the human body and psyche. So that being said, Ayurveda is not here to replace Western medicine. Instead, they're meant to complement one another. Where conventional or Western medicine is excellent for acute injury and illness, like cutting off your arm or having a wound or being in a car accident, that's where Western medicine really excels. Ayurveda and any types of alternative holistic practices are there to support longevity as well as disease prevention. So they complement each other very, very well. Now, there is a very good chance that you're already practicing Ayurveda, even if you don't know about it. There are so many amazing practices that we hear of, like tongue scraping or dry brushing or oil pulling or abhyanga, which is when you do a self-oil massage. And these are all Ayurvedic practices. Ayurveda is actually the sister science to yoga, which is more rooted in mind and body, whereas yoga is more rooted in consciousness. They are meant to be practiced in tandem together. The rishis, the sages who discovered Ayurveda, really, they knew that one must first have a pure and functioning vessel before they can ever go beyond it. In other words, yoga is the practice of conscious awareness, and Ayurveda is the practice of balancing the mind and body. Think about it. When you are feeling unwell, whether you're feeling sick or you're having digestive issues, or even if you're experiencing depression, anxiety, or any kind of emotional upset, it is really hard to go beyond the physical body in those moments. We feel sort of locked into the body, into the felt experience. And going into those higher access points of consciousness can feel out of reach. So when the mind and the body are in harmony, when we feel ease in the mind, when we feel ease in the body, going beyond this physical vessel, going into those deeper meditative practices feels a lot more accessible. And this is why they're so important to practice side by side. The science of the 5 elements is probably the most important part of Ayurveda, and actually so many other ancient sciences like astrology and alchemy. And it is absolutely recommended that these 5 elements are contemplated and studied regularly. Those 5 elements, as you can see on the side here, are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Doshas. Doshas are your mind-body type, also known as your energy type, also known as your constitution. Your dosha is your unique mind-body type, and it is comprised of a combination of the 5 elements of those earth, water, fire, air, and ether elements. Ayurveda uses these elements as a reference to explain all aspects of the physical and mental well-being. So each of us is born with a certain amount of these elements. Some people are more fiery, right? We have those really ambitious types of people, the ones who are the go-getters. They're the ones who they love working out and using a lot of their vigor and energy. Some people are more watery. They tend to be a little more in their emotions, a little more comfortable in their emotions. They tend to be more flowy and easygoing. And then we also have some people who are a little more airy, right? They're the creative types, the ones who are always inspired, and they flutter around life with this really connected sense of being. Each of us is born with a specific dosha. However, we all have all of the elements within us, simply in varying amounts. In addition to this, we have what is called our natural born dosha, or prakriti. If you don't remember the words, don't worry. And then we also have what is called vikruti, and vikruti is our current dosha. Your dosha, these elements vary based on your environment, based on the foods that you're eating, based on what and practices you are using every day. And so what you were born into, those elements might change and shift over time, depending on the time of day, depending on the season, and also depending on the time of your life that you're in. This mind-body connection is a cornerstone in Ayurveda, as they're believed to be, again, inextricably related. Whatever happens in the body is a reflection of what happens in the mind, and vice versa. There's a quote in Ayurveda that says, if you want to know what your mind will be like tomorrow, look at your digestion today. And you can think about that one for a moment. If you want to know what your mind will be like tomorrow, look at your digestion today. The 3 doshas are the building blocks of all matter. So yes, we see them in people, we see them in our characteristics, in our physical body, and everything to do with the human experience. However, the doshas are also the foundational building blocks of food, of our environment, and literally everything else in the observable universe. Once we understand the doshas, we understand a different language, a different way of seeing life, a different way of seeing food, a different way of seeing energy. We see that the winter season brings a lot more of the Kapha type energy. And don't worry, I'll get a little deeper into each one in a moment. We see that the winter is a little more cold, a little more calm, a little more quiet. We start to see that certain foods like spices and chilies are a little more pitta, they're a little more fiery in nature. And we also start to see a little more of that air and either Vata energy in certain types of behaviors of people, the creative, artistic types of people. This is why this language of Ayurveda and understanding doshas can be so applicable not only with our own self, but also with how we relate to the world around us. We each have all of the 3 doshas and all of the 5 elements within us. Without them, your body would simply not function. They work in synergy with one another in their beautiful divine balance, and their imbalances also affect one another. The doshas show up in all of your characteristics, from the way that you digest, to the way that you sleep, to the way that you communicate with the external world, to your eating and nutrition habits, to everything, your work ethic, everything. And each dosha governs a specific function that affects the rest of your body. The more that you become aware of these doshas, the more you're going to be able to see the interconnectivity of your own body. And this is a beautiful thing. On the right side here, you can see that there's the three doshas there. We've got Vata, which is made up primarily of air and ether. So we can imagine Vata is a little more light and airy. And then we have Pitta, which is fire and water. The Pitta types are a little more ambitious and fiery. And then we have Kapha, and Kapha is earth and water, which is a little more grounded, centered. Let's dive into each of the doshas a little more in depth. Let's begin with Vata. Vata is comprised again of air and ether elements, and it regulates your nervous system and all movement within your body. Physically, a Vata dominant person is naturally going to be petite. They could be very tall or they could be very short, though typically they're a smaller frame. They might have, more of the bone structure that shows up. They might seem to have a larger teeth compared to their jaw. They're the types of people who are naturally a little more on the thin side, and they have a harder time putting on weight and fat and muscle. They tend, because of the excess air and ether, to have a little bit of a drier body, drier hair, drier nails, drier skin, and they are always on the move. I want to be very clear for a moment here. When I'm speaking to the different types of energies in people, sometimes we can hear this and it can sound a little bit disempowering. And so I really want you to listen carefully for a more empowering frame in this. We can understand that the Vata type might be a little drier naturally, and this is a sign that Vata is out of balance. When we use these symptoms, right, as a way of identifying imbalance, that is so empowering because it reminds us, you know what I can do? I can rebalance myself with my nutrition, with my lifestyle habits, with my environment, etc. And I'll get a little bit deeper in a moment into how to rebalance any of these imbalances. Vatas are the types of people who are always on the move, they're always on the go, right? I like to think of them as the pixie energy, right? And when I envision the Vata type in my head, they're a petite person with like a pixie cut, and they're floating around, and they seem to literally almost float, and they're very creative, and they're always making art. They're quick, right? They love to talk. They love to hold a conversation. They're high energy, and they love to be in stimulating surroundings. This is because of their wind type movement. Vatas, however, can get very easily lost in their thought and in their ideas. And it can be a little challenging for them to stick to one thing all the way through because they're so inspired. So it's important for the Vata type person to pacify or reduce excess wind energy by grounding. So Ayurveda is very intuitive. If we look at the air and ether and we see that air and ether is in excess, it's out of balance, the opposite would be adding earth. So how do we bring a little more of the earth and water energy into Vata dosha? You might experience as a Vata with imbalance, constipation or gas and bloating. In the mind, we see a little bit more anxiousness. In the physical body, we see a little bit more of irregular periods for women. With uteruses, we see a loss of memory, possibly poor blood circulation and cold limbs. They might have a little bit of dryness and flakiness in their skin, dryness in their hair. Insomnia is a really big one for the Vata type energy because they seem to feel they have all the energy at night. So if this is sounding like something that you identify with, this might indicate an imbalance of Vata. So, and also another note here, you might notice that you resonate more with Vata in your body, less in the mind, or you might notice more Vata in your mind and less so in your body. That's okay. So there's a couple of quick notes down at the bottom here. The mind, the creative, and the body, the lean. Their obstacle is sticking to one idea through to the end. Imbalances would be digestive irregularities, variety. Qualities of this energy of Vata, or we call that gunas in Sanskrit, would be dry, light, cold, rough, and mobile, just like the air and ether. The season, the time of the year that is the most Vata dominant is autumn, right? We can see the leaves drying up. We can see that everything becomes a little bit more dry in the autumn, right? This is very, very much Vata type energy. And what's really beautiful, and this is a super pro tip, right? The intuition part is really strong here. If we look at autumn in the Western world, I can't speak to other parts of the world because I know not everywhere has seasons like we do. In the autumn, as things start to dry up, what do we see is growing at that time of the year? We see squash, root vegetables, mushrooms, and nuts. And those types of foods are all very grounding, naturally speaking. So nature goes into a Vata state and also provides us with foods that balance excess Vata. So this is really a beautiful thing. The times of day that are associated with Vata energy are between 2 and 6 a.m. and p.m. And 2 to 6 a.m. is really an auspicious time. You'll see lots of monks who get up around 3, 4 in the morning to do their deep meditation at this time because the veil is the thinnest at that time of day. And because Vatas are naturally more connected to that ethereal energy, they might notice they have more energy around that time of day. This is when creativity is often very high as well. So tips for Vata energy: stay grounded, stay centered, stay focused. Let's speak to Pitta, and Pitta is ruled by fire and water energy. And this governs your stomach, metabolism, and all transformation within inside your body. Pittas, as a person, they're typically the naturally athletic type, right? They're the ones who, even if they don't go to the gym, they still have their muscles. They might have a more medium-sized body, medium-sized build, and they don't tend to gain weight very quickly or fat anyways, but they easily put on muscle. The Pitta type people have a reddish undertone, and this could be reddish undertone in their hair. It could be a red undertone of their skin. They might be more prone to having freckles and moles, and likely a little bit more of sensitive skin because of that excess fire. And that sensitivity can manifest as rashes. It can manifest as rosacea. It could be excess oil in their body, which could also lead to more acne as well. So these are some things that Pittas are naturally more inclined to, particularly when they're out of balance. Pitta types are very driven. They are very high achievers. They're the ones who, in society, they're more of like the CEO, the natural leader type. And they tend towards those leadership positions because they have the energy and gumption for it. However, Pittas must be careful not to burn themselves out. Because they seem to have all the energy in the world, they want to lead in the day in their work. They want to go to the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week. They want to do. What's really important for Pitta type is to take a moment to breathe and cool down. Now, when Pitta is out of balance, you might experience heartburn, overheating, foul smelling sweat, acne, skin breakouts with acne, rosacea, psoriasis, loose stool. Anger is typically one of the emotional sides for them, impatience. And we want to really consider that these are all what excess fire would bring, right? The overheating, the heartburn, these are all acidity. Excess acidity in the body is also a big one. Again, just like with Vata, you might find you're more Pitta in your body than your mind, or more Pitta in your mind than your body. Take note of this. So a couple of quick notes here. In the mind, Pittas are ambitious. In the body, they're athletic. Their obstacle is burnout. Their imbalances manifest as anger, heartburn, loose stool. Their qualities or gunas are hot, sharp, oily, liquid, and light, just like fire and water. Now, the season when Pitta is naturally highest is in the summertime. We see in the summertime, right? It's hot weather. Everything is really hot and typically a little more humid. That is super Pitta naturally. And nature, again, provides us with exactly what we need to counterbalance that excess Pitta. We see cucumbers and we see coconut coconut water. We see all of pineapples, right? All of these really incredible, juicy, cooling foods like dill, like fennel, etc. All of these things start to grow, which help our bodies to cool down internally during those hot seasons. The times of day that are associated with Pitta are between 10 and 2 a.m. and p.m. And so we can think of this like, noon, right? When we have lunch is the best time of day to have your largest meal, because that is when Pitta, your metabolism energy, is at its highest. So that's when you're going to want to have your largest meal. You can put in a little bit more of the raw fruits and vegetables, which are typically harder on digestion at that time, because that's when your digestion is the strongest. At night, you might even notice around midnight, you get that second wind of energy, right? That's because Pitta, that ambition energy, is coming back for a little bit of a vengeance, we'll call it. So a little pro tip for Pittas: rest and cool down and prioritize this. And for Pittas, that's one of the hardest things to hear, because you have so many things you want to do. But remember, you want to be providing from an overflowing cup. And the way you do this is by softening. Now, our last dosha is called Kapha dosha, which is ruled and comprised by earth and water elements. Kapha is in charge of your bone density and all structure within your body. The Kaphas are naturally curvy. They have typically a little bit more of a round face. They have thick, luscious hair, very smooth, luscious skin, and a silky voice, as well as very lustrous nails. So the Kapha types are, they're the ones who unfortunately have a little bit of a harder time losing fat. Though I do want to speak to this for a moment. For Kaphas, it is actually correct for them to be a little bit on the heavier side within reason. And so if this is something that you've struggled with in your life, or that you've lived with in your life and feeling like you have a hard time losing fat, maybe it's because Kapha energy is a little bit higher within you. This is very nuanced. Of course, there are types who might have an imbalance and they put on weight, etc. But I do want to speak to this from a very realistic perspective. We are all built differently for very, very strong reasons. Now, the Kapha type, they are typically the caregivers. They're very easygoing, they're patient, and they're compassionate people. However, they tend to overgive and can often forget to replenish themselves, which can lead them to becoming resentful. So two of the mental emotional sides here are resent and complacency with Kaphas, and these are things that we want to really be mindful of. When Kapha is out of balance, you might experience a feeling of heaviness and lethargy and fatigue in the body, water retention. So there's a different type of bloating that we see in Kapha, which is more water retention, and it's sort of everywhere. Vatas tend to bloat more with gas and air in their bellies. So this is one way that you can kind of identify which type of expansion is happening. They might have a little bit slower metabolism. They can tend towards depression when out of balance. Excess weight gain, phlegm is a really, really big one. So if you notice that you get a lot of phlegm in your throat and you're coughing a lot, your tongue is covered with a white coating, this is also a sign of imbalanced Kapha. And then they tend to hoard and cling on and have a lot of attachments. So again, we want to consider that this is very earth and water in nature. Again, you might have more Kapha in the body, the mind. You might have more Kapha in your mind than your body. Again, take note of this. So a few really quick notes here on Kapha. In the mind, typically when balanced, it's peaceful. In their body, they're curvy, strong, built. And their obstacle is putting others before themselves. And that could be other people, that could be other projects. Imbalances would be depression, weight gain, lethargy, laziness. Their gunas, or qualities, are heavy, slow, cold, oily, soft, dense, and liquid, just like earth and water. The season that is associated with Kapha is winter and early spring. And so in winter and early spring, we see that it's cold, it's very wet. This is earth and water in nature. And just as with the other doshas, the winter provides exactly what we need to counterbalance that excess Kapha. So again, in the Western world, where we typically have snow around that time of the year, we're not growing as much food. So we typically would have less access to food, ancestrally speaking. And this is beneficial because we want to keep our digestive system a little light so that we're bogged down with lots of excess dense energy that isn't getting moved and metabolized. So in the winter and early spring, when it's cool, when it's kapha, we want to slow down on overeating. The times of day that are associated with kapha is 6 to 10 a.m. and p.m. And this is the slowest sort of transition time of the day, right? In the mornings, we hear the birds waking up, the sun is rising. In the evenings, the sun is setting again, the birds are chirping. We start to see the world as in this really slow hover point, and that is kapha. So a pro tip for the kapha type, you want to stay invigorated and stay active. We want to add a little bit more fire to this earth and water. So you want to be consuming a little bit more spicy food. You want to be doing invigorating workouts and exercise and stay active. When it comes to balancing your dosha, I want to be very clear. Imbalance means excess. So if you have excess kapha, you're going to have too much earth and water. If you have excess vata, it's too much, or an imbalance rather in vata, it's excess air and ether. And same thing with pitta, it'd be a lot of fire and water. So when we balance, what we're doing is we're helping to reduce that dosha. So the first thing that you want to do when you're trying to balance your dosha is identify which element is the highest. Which element is the highest? I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say that you're having a vata imbalance. You're going to be feeling a little more anxious, right? Have a hard time sitting still. Maybe you're having insomnia, you can't sleep. Your skin is really dry and it's all flaking, and like no matter how much moisturizer, you're still dry. Maybe you're having a lot of bloating, gas, and constipation. Those are all signs of vata imbalance, too much vata. So you want to help to balance by adding more of the earth and water elements. You want to ground and hydrate, right? Pretty intuitive. How you would balance your vata dosha is anchoring into your body. So embodiment is so important. If you're feeling anxious, you're outside of your body. What you want to do is come into your body through dance, through breath work, through mirror work, anchor in. Flowing and slow breath patterns are going to be really important for the vata type. Grounding and warming foods are going to be extremely supportive. And you can focus on these three main tastes for vata: sweet, sour, and salty. Now, when I say sweet, I'm not talking about sugar and candy and chips and pops. I'm talking about fruits and things that are naturally sweet. Nuts have a natural sweetness. Certain spices like cinnamon is going to have a natural sweetness, and nutmeg. Sour foods are going to be more of the citrus type foods. The reason for sour foods help to hydrate, right? So think of when you eat something sour, you start to salivate. That is what sour foods do inside of your body. They help to hydrate and lubricate. And then salty is the same thing. It's going to help your body to retain more moisture. And you always want to choose a high quality salt, not table salt, but instead go for something pigmented and rich like a Hawaiian or Himalayan salt. And another practice here that is going to be really, really great for the vata type is abhyanga, which is self-oil massage. If you're not sure how to do that, there are loads of videos on YouTube that will show you how. And for vata, I recommend using sesame oil, not toasted sesame, unless you want to smell like a toasted sesame treat. But sesame oil is going to be really great because it's warming for your skin. It's also a little heavier, so it's grounding, and it's going to really, really support you. So if you're having pitta imbalance, right, that's fire and water, you might notice that you're feeling irritable. You tend towards anger. You might notice that your skin is breaking out in red or, fiery type experiences like acne, rashes, rosacea, psoriasis. You might notice that you're having heartburn or excess acidity in your body. Ulcers are a really big one that are connected to pitta type as well. And then diarrhea is a really big one of the digestive tract. And we can kind of think of it like that excess fire is breaking everything down so fast, so that can create loose stool. When you are having an imbalance of pitta energy, what you want to do is the opposite, right? That's too much fire. How can we cool the fire down? How can we add a little bit of the earth, right? Because if you pour a little bit of earth on fire, it's going to help to dampen it. Because Pitta already has a lot of water energy, we're not going to add too much more water, because that fire and water can create oil. So with Pitta imbalance, you want to focus on calming movement, like yin yoga, like deep stretch, nothing that requires a lot of like physical deep breathing, panting, that type of stuff. And I know for the Pitta types who are listening to this, you're like, yeah. But I mean this, it's hard to hear and it's so important. You want to focus on soothing and calming and cooling breath patterns. So something like Nadi Shodhana, and I'm sure that there's a really, really great practice in here somewhere. Basically what you're going to do is take your thumb and your ring finger, and you're going to alternate nostril breathing. So breathing in through the left, holding, breathing out through the right, breathing in through the right, holding, breathing out through the left. This is a very balancing and cooling type of breath pattern. You also want to focus on cooling foods. So avocado, coconut, dill, mint, fennel. These are some really nice cooling foods that are going to help to reduce that excess heat in the body. And more than anything, you want to avoid pungent foods. So avoid chilies, cayenne, onions, garlic, especially if they're raw. You want to avoid the things that are going to add fire. So some of the tastes that you can focus on as Pitta are sweet, bitter, and astringent. So sweet foods naturally have a cooling element to them, right? So the sweet foods are going to be great. Again, we're going for juicy fruits. So anything that's juicy, anything that's fruity, those are going to be really great. Crunchy, juicy cucumbers, those are really great as well. They have a sweetness. The bitterness is also really important for the Pitta type. Excuse me. So bitter foods are going to be like your dark leafy greens, your spirulina, anything that has that taste at the back of the mouth. And then astringent. So astringent foods are drying, right? They're puckering. And a really great example is like red wine typically has a dryness to it, and it almost makes your mouth feel a little drier. The reason for astringent foods is it's going to help to dry up some of that excess oil. So something like turmeric is going to be really, really great for you here. And also artichoke hearts are amazing and astringent. And for the Pitta types, taking an inventory of your entire life and environment and removing stressors, whether that's people, projects, conversations, whatever it is, removing excess stress is going to be so pleasant for you to bring peacefulness. Finally, Kapha. If you're having an imbalance of Kapha, which means too much earth and water, it might look like depression. It might look like water retention and excess weight in the body, feeling sluggish and lazy and unmotivated. It might manifest as feeling resentful or hoarding and holding on to emotions, holding on to physical material things. This is Kapha imbalance. So what you want to do is, again, the opposite. Too much earth and water. What's the opposite? Air and fire. So we want to invigorate that energy. We want to start to move. And I know when we're feeling sluggish, right? It's like, oh, do I want to work out today? But that is going to be the thing that creates more energy. Energy creates energy. For the Kapha imbalance, you must sweat every day. Get your heart rate up, get your body perspiring. That's going to help to detoxify some of that excess that your body is clinging on to. You want to use activating breath patterns. So Kapalabhati breath, or the breath of fire, is a really great one. And again, if you're not familiar, it's more of a invigorating type of breath. And this is actually also called Agni breath, which is like our digestive fire breath. That's going to help to speed up your metabolism and start to get things moving and active. You want to focus on foods that are metabolism boosting. So the tastes for you, Kapha type, are going to be pungent, astringent, and bitter. Pungent are the spicy foods like chilies, cayennes, onions, garlics, foods that are going to really add excess fire and speed things up in your metabolism. You want to focus on astringent foods to help dry out some of that excess water. And then you want to focus on bitter. Because Kaphas are naturally very sweet, we want to offset the sweetness with bitter. And I know we tend to crave what we are. So for the Kapha types, if you're like, oh, but I just love cheese and I love sweets and chocolate, I feel you. something that you can do, especially if you do notice that you have sweet cravings, is focus on a very unsweetened, so like 70% dark chocolate. And if you can find it even less sweetened, wonderful. The reason for this is it's going to help to, you're going to get what you're looking for with that dark chocolate, but it's also got the bitterness to it, which is really, really important. And then of course, focusing on the dark leafy greens, spirulina, moringa, matcha, those types of things are going to really, really support you. For the Kapha type, another practice that you can do is called dry brushing. And what you're going to do is take like a loofah and you're going to keep it dry. And then you're going to brush, you can see my leg here, you're going to brush up the legs, all around the legs, up the arms, all the way up the arms and up the belly and the back. What you're doing is you're moving energy towards the center of your body, towards your heart. And this is really supportive. It helps to stimulate your lymph system, your immune system. It starts to stimulate detoxification in your body, and it helps your body to release any excess. So this is really an important practice for you, Kapha. For all of the doshas, another really important tip, if you can, is try to align these practices with the time of day that corresponds with your dosha. So for the Vata, try to practice Abhyanga between the 2 and 6 a.m. or p.m. whenever you're up. For the Pitta type, try to align your breath patterns, those cooling breath patterns around the 10 to 2 a.m. or p.m. mark. For the Kapha, I'm going to try and do those more invigorating styles of breath work between 6 to 10 a.m. and p.m. Of course, if you're trying to go to sleep, you might not want to do something invigorating right before bed. And another note here is that if one dosha is out of balance, they all are. It's not possible to have one dosha out of balance while the other two are in perfect harmony. They work in synergy. So we want to focus on bringing into balance the dosha that is the most out of balance. And this is going to become a daily practice. Right? This practice of Ayurveda, of understanding our dosha, really allows us to anchor into the present moment. It allows us to be so consciously aware of every experience in our mind and in our bodies because we are constantly checking in. So something that you can do if you're just getting used to this in the beginning is start to write notes every day. Start a little body log, right? Note down, this morning, woke up feeling lethargic, woke up feeling, had a lot of energy, woke up feeling a little spacey, unfocused. Notice what happened in your digestion. Ooh, feeling a little constipated today, feeling a little bloated, digestion's really on point. Note these things down every day and start to track over the course of a week. And then what you can do is come back into this lesson, right? If you took notes, awesome. If you need to come back, it's here. And you're going to do whatever you can to help bring it back into balance. And this becomes a daily experience. Suddenly what starts to happen is that we don't look at food as just a thing that we do anymore. We look at food as literal medicine. We look at every activity, every behavior that we do as a ritual because we know that it is here to support us at the highest level. And if you have any more questions, I'm open to answering them for you. So I know this is a lot of information. Where do you start, right? Where do we even start when implementing this? The first thing is you're going to determine what your prakriti, remember that's your natural born dosha, is. And then you're going to understand that that is your North Star. You are always striving to be more in alignment with a balanced version of your prakriti. And a little note, I didn't speak to dual doshas. Most of us actually have a dual dosha, meaning that we're like a Pitta type and Pitta Kapha. Some people are Kapha Vata, some people are pure Pitta, some people are a balance of all of them. And so you can do this by taking a dosha quiz online. There are a lot of really amazing books out there as well. Once you've identified your natural born dosha, use that as your North Star and as your guide. Step 2 is you pay attention to digestion of food, so below. Step 3, you want to incorporate dosha balancing practices into your morning and evening rituals. In the morning, the first thing that I do every morning is I scrape my tongue. That is the most incredible thing you can ever do for so many reasons. If you don't have a tongue scraper, you can spoon, scrape your tongue of all the bacteria and buildup that's been moving its way into your mouth overnight. and start the day fresh like that. Maybe the evening is when you do your Abhyanga practice, right? Self-oil massage, or maybe you do a breath work or yoga. Try to start incorporating one at a time into your morning and evening rituals. Step 4, you want to incorporate dosha balancing foods into your diet. And remember, those 6 tastes that I mentioned, each of you has 3 tastes that are going to help to support your dosha in all moments. And then finally, track your progress. Track your progress. Track your progress. Can't say it enough. If we're not tracking our progress, it's so easy to forget or just to not pay attention to the amazing transformation that happens when we apply this. Track your progress, and it gets to be simple. You can just have a little note on your phone. You can have a notebook if you prefer to write manually. You can have an accountability buddy and check in once a day. Whatever helps you track. And a quick little FYI, Ayurveda is not meant to be rigid and dogmatic. This is not a definite, oh, I can't do that, I can't eat this, I can't say this because of my dosha, right? Nor is it meant to be used as a Bible or as gospel. This beautiful system is a portal to understanding yourself on a more deep and profound level, and also to continuing to do so for the rest of your life as you change, as you evolve, because you will. So let this be your permission slip to play. Let this be your permission slip to have fun, to experiment, and to really feel every single thing. So that's the end. I thank you so much for your time, for your energy, and for your attention. I know that this has been a pretty in-depth lesson, and if this was new for you, consider yourself now an intermediate, I want to say, right, in the understanding of Ayurveda and your dosha. And if questions came up during this lesson, if you have any follow-up that you need to, get some clarity on, if you'd like me to point you in the direction of some resources, you can always connect with me. I spend a lot of time over on Instagram at Amy Activates, and you can reach out. I'm super happy to support you there. With that, have a beautiful day, and I'm sending you so much love wherever in the world you are.